Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner Studio, and with me today is author Todd Dennick. Todd has got a new book out here. I'm going to hold it up, and Mark's going to zoom in on it here. This book here is actually being published by one of our local companies, our publishing company we have here in the Valley. I think they call it LALO, and that's, I can't remember what that stands for, but the publisher's here in the studio, and he'll prompt us here if we screw it up too bad.
Let art live on.
Oh, say it again.
Let art live on.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now because we were doing prints and stuff for you.
Right.
So Chips is here. Chip, I forgot your Lickson. It's great to forget names when you get old. I can blame it on old age, right?
Yep.
You know how that, maybe I have some sort of old age disease or something.
Could be.
All right. Well, Chips told me all about the book. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he said, you are a great adventurer, and you're going to be speaking at the library tonight. I guess.
This evening. Yep,
So,
we'll be there.
so missing that for people watching this, they'll watch it tomorrow. But they'll get your book, and hopefully they'll have been at the library. Maybe we'll see what's going on there. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your book and why in the world would you go and write a book like this? You know?
A little bit about myself. I was born in Virginia here in Alexandria, and Virginia Tech graduate.
All right. Well, we won't hold that against
And I got a little adventurous after university, and I got a husky and decided to see what Alaska was like. And I spent nearly 15 years in Alaska racing sled dogs. I was teaching. I ran the Iditarod, which is close to a 1,000-mile sled dog race.
I've heard about
across.
this. I watched documentaries on that thing. That was...
And that was...
That's a life-changing adventure.
Every bit of it, yes. When you have to rely on 16 dogs to get you from one place to the next.
And in the middle of nowhere?
In the middle of nowhere.
Literally, exactly. In the middle of nowhere.
No roads, and you have to fly in and out. The rivers are frozen, of course, so no boats. Yeah. And in Alaska, I was fortunate enough to meet a German tourist who became my wife. Wow. And we spent nearly 15 years together in Germany, in Two Rivers, Alaska, and raised our son there. And at one point, we just kind of were looking for another change. My wife would like to make it home to family, and so
happy wife, happy life.
2014, we moved to Germany, and it was just
that's another adventure.
And we just planned on being there for a year, but we got settled in and don't have any plans.
You speak German?
To leave.
Well, are you trying to speak German?
I do. I can get around fairly well. I'm not fluent, but
right. But when you're immersed into it, it's easier, I think, to learn, don't you think? Yeah,
and throughout my entire medical journey, nothing was in English.
Right. Oh.
So that's even more intense, dealing with nurses, and most of the doctors could speak well.
Well, let's talk about how this adventure has turned into get you to write this book.
Yeah, it's so...
People are going to say, what in the world are we talking about here? So,
in Germany, it was... it's kind of a chain of events that led to it. I'm an English teacher, an English literature teacher, and I was in charge of the English department. And I was at the Franconian International School in Erlangen, which is about 2 hours north of Munich, north of Nuremberg, in Bavaria. And I was having problems with anxiety and stress, a little bit of burnout from work. And the way that I thought to solve it was through medication. And so I went to a psychiatrist and a neurologist, and she gave me something to help with the anxiety. And it helped with the anxiety, but it just covered the symptoms. And regardless of how good I felt up here, the body was not being submissive and not being understanding to what was happening. And so that January, we were at a Ninja Warrior facility, and which was totally frustrating. But our son wanted to go.
Totally out of character for you, right?
Yeah. But we were there, and I fell off the first machine thing, and I just felt funny. And I didn't think anything of it because the padding was a good 2 foot thick. And must have been a week or 10 days later, I was walking the dogs and I took a little slip and I thought, that's not right. And I went to the doctor and found out I had a broken rib, one of the small ribs in the back. And of course that started with the medication, but what that did is that released shingles because the old chicken pox, they remain in the back and the nerves. And that break released the shingles on top of the stress. And it just, I could not believe how painful, severely painful shingles could be. I thought it was just an old people's thing. But holy smokes, it wiped me out. I was in the hospital for 4 days, hooked up to pain medicine. And
the shingle's just not always on your back or your stomach or something. It could be everywhere.
I was, in a way, I was fortunate that it was on my side and ran down my legs. And I still have, from where the shingles were, my leg is still numb. And so it's going to have a long-lasting impact.
Right, that's what I heard.
And, but yeah, fortunately, I didn't have it on my face or my eyes. And that episode with the shingles is where I was introduced and given a medication called metamizole or Novocaine. And Novocaine is illegal in the United States because of some of its adverse reactions. But in Germany, it's as common as ibuprofen. And in fact, it's used as a supplement or a replacement for ibuprofen because it's easier on the stomach and just as effective. I just happen to be one of the statistics. And those 1 in 10,000 who have a reaction to the medication, the 1 in so many 100,000 who have a severe reaction. But what that medication did is it completely wiped out my immune system. I had a 0 white blood cell count. And of course, I didn't know any of this was happening. I just felt terrible. But shingles, broken rib, stress at work, I felt terrible anyway.
Sure.
And so I really didn't have any thought that it could be something so severe. And even one evening, I was sitting at home. It had been days since I was able to eat or drink anything. I had seen a doctor, and she prescribed me some amoxicillin type stuff. And it was at the point where I couldn't swallow anymore. I couldn't drink anymore. So I was taking these amoxicillin tablets, and I thought if I can just get them down, I'll be fine. And I couldn't even swallow them. So when my wife, we finally decided to call the ambulance and have the ambulance come, the doctor came, and he was shocked because I was frothing at the mouth and I had the white chalk all over the place. And I said, I just want hydration. Just, hook me up to an IV and I'll be fine. And I kept pushing that, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I can get through this.
That's the manly thing to do.
Yeah. And, part of it is being a teacher too, because it's easier to go in when you feel a little unwell than it is to do lesson plans for somebody else to do. But you want to be there
how you
for
were handling
everybody.
Your stress.
Yeah. And it was interesting because the guy that came in, every time the ambulance comes in Germany, a doctor comes with them. And he came in, he checked me out, refused to give me the IV because he said you need to go to the hospital. He did write me another prescription for antibiotics, though, which, of course, were never filled. And that evening, they left, and my wife, we still talk about this. We don't know when we made that decision to go to the hospital. And I don't remember why we made that decision, but that's something that comes up so often. How do you know when it's the right time? I didn't have a big cut that needed to be sewn up. Sepsis wasn't on our agenda at all.
I tell you when you think you're going to die.
And that's kind of exactly what's...
You can't describe it, but you know it's happening.
Yeah, and I was able to... She took me to the emergency room. I got out of the car. I walked across the street into the hospital, and
last thing you remember?
Yep. So once I was in somebody's good hands, I think my body just said,
I'm out of here.
Yeah. And so what sepsis is it's an intense reaction, your body's intense reaction to an infection. Mm-hmm. And the big issue with that is the body starts to attack itself.
Right. An organ starts shutting down.
And so during the process, I had, liver, kidneys, lung infections because I didn't have an immune system anymore. I had 3 major surgeries on my neck because this is where the infection rested. I was intubated for the first 2 weeks, and then that, in order to make sure we didn't have any longer damage, they had a tracheotomy, which was in for a good 3.5 months. But at the end, the coma was medically induced and lasted 8 weeks.
Wow.
It was really touch and go at some points.
I would say you were right on the verge of one way or the other there, leaving this world.
Yeah, our neighbor, who was a doctor, he said if you would have waited the next morning, you wouldn't have made it.
Right.
And that's, sepsis it can take down a professional athlete.
Sure.
Overnight.
Yep.
And it's not something, I have had a pretty severe case, but it's something that can happen from a bug bite that you scratch, a cut that goes unattended. Sometimes, through colonoscopies or other scopes,
sure,
a little puncture can cause.
You hear about it all the time, but you don't know anybody that has it.
Yeah, and that's
because
the thing is that 1 in 5 deaths in the United States are sepsis related.
Right.
And so it's not something that's uncommon. And what I find, the more that I talk about it and the more that I'm out and engaging with people, the more stories I hear that,
maybe that's what I had, or that's what I had it too,
or
people start sharing those things and you're like,
yeah. And that's the real key. That was part of the impetus behind writing the book, was therapeutic. It was a suggestion from a friend, but that's really what kind of I'm most proud of about the book, is bringing sepsis and sepsis awareness to the forefront.
Right. Your subtitle here says Alaskan Adventures Pale in comparison to Surviving Sepsis. So you kind of tie your adventures to your adventures, or so?
Adventures.
So how does that work?
Yeah. So we were looking at, life in Alaska is not easy.
No.
It's always active, though. There's always something to do. And, at one point, the family, we had 14 sled dogs. And so you were out every single day, whether it was 80 degrees or 40 below.
It's like owning cows. You got to milk them whether you want to or not.
You got to take care of them, yep. And take care of them in the dark.
Sure.
You have 3 hours of daylight.
Summer, doesn't matter.
And I was also racing sled dogs, doing some mid-distance race and long-distance racing. So I've spent my time out in 40 below temperatures.
So you go from this literally Paul Bunyan type character to flat on your back in a coma.
Yeah, it's.
That's a drastic. That's how I can see it. All of a sudden, one day you're doing this, next day you're not doing it, and maybe not doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing, is that's taking a look at the recovery. Everything starts at recovery. Everything starts at, it's not a cure, but at the end of it.
Tell us what people expect the treatment, and the people that have this, because I'm sure that other people have it in different levels, and
right.
But it's very serious.
It is.
And so what's the protocol normally for treating people like this? And is that what you went through, or do you have your own adventure? I got to think you had your own adventure.
I think so. I was very fortunate that my wife kept very detailed notes during my time in the hospital, and she recorded what medications I was taking, the amount I was taking. I have a daily record of my temperature. And so the first part of the book, where I am in the coma in those 8 weeks, are largely based and fictionalized on her accounts, and her little notes and comments that she's made, which, the book wouldn't be here. I don't even think I would have had a place to start the book without her.
Right.
Without her.
It's like you're telling the story while you're in a coma.
Yes. And I made a few choices when putting the book together, to changing names, of course, and changing places, but also setting it in present tense, which gives it a little bit more of the immediacy and the punch of it.
Right.
But as to your question, I think largely the treatment that I went through is relatively normal, making sure that the kidneys and liver and lungs and everything continue to work, getting rid of the infection. And that's something that you see quite often is with sepsis, that infection will settle in one place and then drastic surgeries.
They have to get rid of it. It's the only way to get rid of it.
Yeah,
Drugs and things won't get rid of it.
No, so they cut you open and kind of let you seep.
Yeah.
Yeah, until the infection leaves.
Yeah.
And, kind of that's one of the reasons I was kept in the coma, because they...
the shock of doing that and the mental state that you would go through would be just worse than the disease, I think.
Yeah, and it's quite a bit of, I talk quite a bit about coming in and out of consciousness too, and that was so intense that I had no idea what was going on. Everything was a threat. I was throwing punches at nurses and doctors and I think I even tried to hit Sandra, my wife, at one point too. And it got to the point where, kind of one of my badge of honors is I have a judge order to be restrained. So I spent most of that time in the coma tied to the bed.
And then when you do come out, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. And they would have hands and feet and your hips connected to them. And it was just
really for your own protection more than anything else.
Yeah.
You hurt yourself doing that.
Yeah, of course.
Right. More damage. I can remember when they, had the open heart surgery and they have the tube stuck down, in the respirator.
Right.
And the first time you open your eyes and that thing is in your mouth, it's a shock to your system, even though it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you didn't know it was
I didn't know, no.
And all of a sudden you open your eyes and you have these tubes and things all over you. You think, like what happened?
Yeah, I was pulling them out.
Oh, yeah, I tried to do it too, And yes, it's strange. It's a strange feeling where people have never experienced that. It's an adventure, so to speak.
Yeah, and you're in such a drug-induced state that nobody can.
You can't help.
There's no reason to it. You can't say you're in the hospital. This is what's happening. It's.
So when did all this happen?
So this happened. The anxiety and the stress from work started in November of 2018.
Okay, so it wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. And recovery is still quite a ways away. And that's one of the...
So you think all this sepsis started from that fall?
I think it started from the stress, the shingles. It was just kind of a perfect...
combination of... That's why people... Sometimes you can't pinpoint when things happen like that.
Yep.
It's just when the results happen. We have a friend at church that's got shingles.
Oh,
and it's in his eyes.
Yeah.
And literally, it made him blind.
Yeah.
And it's on his head and sensitivity light. And like you say, and what happened? It's just the recovery. And, same like with you. It's just I think yours is worse.
Yeah. It's when after those 8 weeks in a coma, I was moved to another hospital, late ICU stage hospital, where therapy started too. And really, when I woke up, when I came to, I couldn't walk anymore. I had to learn how to walk again. And it was slow and it was painful. And, when your body feels like it's on pins and needles, like it's waking up all the time. And just the total and absolute exhaustion from walking assisted with a walker, and then, of course, the therapist helping you for...
And this is all in Germany?
Yeah, this is all in Germany.
So how's their health care?
You're
going to give them a plug?
Yeah, I could. It's... after this experience, I say I would not live in a place without state health care again. To be honest, we I looked up the price of, what sepsis costs,
Sure.
and the average is almost $70,000 for a patient. And an average, so that could be one day to
Sure.
an extended stay. And we, of course, pay for it through our taxes,
Sure,
but
sure.
we didn't pay
Yeah.
anything except there's a $10 copay for an
Right.
evening in the hospital.
Right.
But not only that, physical therapy is paid for. And even now, after 2019, 22, 3 years later, I still have physical therapy 2 or 3 times a week to help with some of the joint pain.
Sure.
I had to have quite a bit of voice therapy to learn I couldn't talk when I woke up. I couldn't eat. And so I had all of these therapies that virtually you went through as a
Sure.
little guy,
Yeah, sure.
And even today, I can still go and still have physical therapies to help with the damage that was done.
We don't really realize sometimes what it takes to recover from a serious ailment like that. And I have friends that have had some serious, surgeries and things, and they have to learn how to talk, learn how to eat, learn how to walk. And we just don't really we can't relate to that unless it happened to us.
Yeah. And the other thing about Germany is I was able to take 2 years off of work as well. And I don't know if that could have happened here, but I had to have the time. I needed the time to recover and from not only the impact of the sepsis itself, but the psychological impact that it had.
Right.
And really, that's another big point. And I think those are some of the scariest parts of the book, talking about those psychological impacts that they have. But nobody ever gave me kind of any idea that there would be a post-sepsis
Right.
or post-traumatic stress disorder.
You hear that a lot now with COVID, COVID,
Yeah.
but then when it's over, you got this COVID fog they're talking about,
Exactly.
and how it does linger, and it does linger, and it does linger,
Yeah, and it's life-changing.
It is.
And
It can do it.
even as minor as it might be, I mean, every time, and those psychological reactions, they can happen. It's not an 8-week stay.
Right.
It could be an hour.
Like
It could
going
be a
in,
trip
get your
to the
tonsils out
hospital.
and go home. Yeah, it's not like that. So what about reading this book? What am I going to come away with?
A harrowing story. It's I think it was quite a bit easier to write than it is to read.
Okay.
But it's honest, and it's a really honest account of taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your family, and kind of reevaluating the way you should perceive how you go about life. I mean, Part of it is one thing. I always had problems saying no, which kind of gets into that issue.
I think that's how you get the stress.
Yeah.
That's a hard word for people to learn.
Exactly.
Learn how to say no.
And
That's the first word we learn.
Yes.
But the first word we forget.
Exactly. And I mean, just little steps like that, learning how to be selfish and taking time for yourself is eminently important. And
because how much you had to rely on your family that you didn't really realize that family is important. Yeah.
And that's something we're still, Sandra, my wife, was at my side as often as she could be. When it first happened, we were fortunate enough to live about 11 miles from one of the top medical clinics in Germany. And it's a university. And so I was under good care from the beginning. And then a little bit later, I was moved about 2 hours away from home and into the second stage of rehab. And so she couldn't come and visit as often as I would have liked.
Depressing too.
Yeah.
So when did you start writing the book? Like after all, like one day you said, I think I'm going to write a book.
Yeah. So when I got home, so that would be the end of 2019, so say starting in January of 2020, I was just reconnecting with a friend who had recently lost her father to cancer, and she was going through her own struggles. And so we reconnected as friends from university and just kind of encouraged each other to send writing back and forth.
Sure.
And so I would sit down and I would struggle and write 25 words a week, but it was something every Sunday I sent something to her and she would send something to me. And that started to become a habit. I would sit down and write as much as my body and brain would allow.
25 words turned into 100 words, turned into 300 words, right?
Yep. And it turns into, sometimes it would turn to a few thousand words a day.
Yeah.
And and that's just, just kind of amassing the story that way and putting it together. And, but that routine is still present. I have to admit, I haven't written the past few days, vacation, but I did sit down and write today, but I set a goal of 1,000 words a day, good or bad. I put them down.
Kind of like doing a journal type thing. It's book number 2 is what he's really working on there.
Yeah, I have a trilogy written about my time in Alaska too. And so I'm just, the bug has gotten me, and it's as
they say everyone has a book in them.
Exactly. Everybody does have a book.
Everyone has a book. And today the time and place in the world of publishers and how they can, get into it and printing books and just the internet and everything else. It just makes it so much easier for someone to at least get a book idea to people like Chips and their company that does things. And everyone has a little niche, and you find that and to share these, they get out and about with the internet and Amazon books and people still like to read. And they like to read about personal adventures and see how people have overcome things. And I think that's an important thing, that people really love that. They just like to see that, people have that fortitude to succeed. And also to share things about, the other people that have similar diseases and different things. They said, I made it and look how bad it was for me. You can make it too.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I stress, and I'll talk about that this evening at the library too, is, like you said, everybody has a book in them. And I firmly agree. I firmly believe that. And the great thing about it is that your story could have that impact, but even more importantly, it could save somebody's life.
Exactly.
Like when sepsis was not even in our vocabulary at the time that I had it, but now I hope that it's introduced into others.
And there's a lot of things out there. Like years ago, they would call a disease or an illness one thing. Everyone died from consumption. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the same
tuberculosis.
No matter what it was, but they had consumption.
Yeah.
And covers a multitudes of sins. So to speak. And today, we've narrowed things down. I've been going to the doctor trying to get rid of a headache for 5 years. You have to live with it. That's kind of like, well, wait a minute, there was something causing that.
Exactly.
I'm going to write a book about it.
Yeah, and that's the awareness of it.
Yeah.
And of course, Chips brought it to my attention that, Bill Clinton had a battle with sepsis as well. But his was a non-COVID-19 related illness. And I thought, that's wrong. Call it what it is. I mean, that would, the awareness that Bill Clinton could have brought to the world with his battle with sepsis would be remarkable.
Right.
Influential, change lives, save lives.
So what's these other books you got hiding under there?
Well, not only is Chips a superior publisher, but also an author himself.
Yes, he is. I've seen some of his books.
And so I have a couple of, going to hold them still for you here, a couple of books that he has written. And the second one is with Bryane as well, his wife. So ironing it out.
That's right. He's big into that negotiation. Yep. That's like his forte. That's his lawyer coming to the forefront. You know what I mean? Once a lawyer, always a lawyer.
Yeah.
They always got to get into something there. But it's great. He's done it, and he's tried to do a lot of things in our community. He's made awareness of a lot of things. He's worked with a lot of authors.
Yep.
And it's good to do that. It's kind of his his new calling. I think he's really taking it to another level. And people like you that's got these ideas and to write a book, and there's people out there, maybe not be Chips, might be somebody else, but there's people out there that, that your story touched them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what happened. He read your story and he could relate. And some people, they do that. And that's how things happen. It's just sharing the message.
Yeah. And just knowing that you're not alone.
I think that's true, that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And you can have help. It's kind of, you see that sharing, with family, your spiritual world, your friends, your community. And don't be afraid to ask for help. And I'm sure you've learned that when you have to depend on other people to take care of you. When you were in that coma, they did everything for you.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. And
you don't really think about it. And we don't, like what happens when I'm in a coma? Well, the body still keeps working,
Somehow, yeah.
You have to feed it and extract it and everything else. So it's
but in that coma, you don't, I was unaware of their 8 weeks.
Yeah.
That are
don't
gone.
Exist, that you don't know what happened. Yeah. And you see movies about that,
Mention some of the trips you took while you were not quite there are some of the best parts of the book.
Some of the trips.
The helicopter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are.
See how the story touched Chips?
Yeah. There's a series of stories in here that never happened.
Right.
But
you thought they did.
But I was convinced that they did happen. And that was something, going back to looking at the community and the awareness that I thought it was me going crazy.
Sure.
I thought I was insane. And there were times when the nurses and doctors would tell my wife that, if he isn't mentally right, we can't treat him. And so that became, I was aware of that, and that became a fear that I would be permanently, I didn't know what would be left of me. But I've had strange occurrences and so vivid dreams that are more specific than anything that really did happen. There were people in my room that were never in my room, interactions with close friends, which I was referring to as a helicopter ride.
Sounds like you're having an out-of-body experience there.
Exactly, yeah. And so friends who had no business driving helicopters were the ones carting me back and forth, and some really...
The brain is a wonderful organ.
Oh, man.
And it fills in when pieces are missing, it takes other experiences from your life somewhere and things you've seen and done and puts it together and makes it a reality that is believable.
Yeah, it's how it repairs trauma.
Yeah.
And it tries to put you in places that you're comfortable, people that
safe,
you know, and safe. Yep.
That's what it does. It does. Well, it sounds like you had a lot of experiences, good and bad.
Yes.
And a lot of adventures, real and unreal.
Real and unreal, true. Yeah.
So you're going to become a science fiction writer next time. Maybe your next book is on things you just dreamed about,
Yeah, there's a world out there. So.
There's a world out there. But it's great that you did this. I think it's very therapeutic. And hopefully that your story will help other people with similar things, that it's okay to know that there's people out there that it'll be okay. Just stick it out and get your head on straight. And I think that's a lot of it, like you say, and learn this no word. You got to take care of yourself. I mean, we're all guilty of it. We're all worried about everything, and especially if you're entrepreneurial or you're in a stressful type position. And you need to learn to, take that vacation. It's okay.
Yeah, take that extra hour lunch. Take whatever it is that you need to be.
Spend time with your loved ones. Yeah. Don't take them for granted. We know all these things, but we don't all do them, and it's really a shame that we should do that. We need to do that.
Yeah, and it shouldn't take a situation like this too.
Well,
it's really
I hope that things
in
the future are better for you, and good luck on your talk at the library.
Thank you very much.
It'll be interesting, and we will put links to where you can buy this book here in the story. It's a great read. I think I'm going to start reading a few chapters here and see. I see how you've done it. It's kind of almost like it's a journal.
Right. Yeah.
Day 1 here and day 2 here and this date. And like say, using your wife's notes, you're able to put things together.
Yeah, and I was able to weave in stories from Alaska too to kind of to put the to give it some structure. You had a lot of
adventures before this happened to you.
Yeah,
and that there is enough in itself. Just writing about your 7 days in the tundra. You know?
Yeah,
I've seen stories on it. It's just unreal.
Oh, it is.
And I tell people, I was in Greenland for a year.
Oh, really?
And so people have this vision of Greenland, and vision of Alaska, and places where they'd never been. But, really, when I was in the military, that was really one of my best assignments of the time I spent in the military, was a place that no one wants to go. And I just thought I just took advantage of a lot of things, and I loved it. And I'm sure it's like what you did. You went to go visit and you stayed 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it became home. And
take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And just, maybe we need to learn to say, that's where we need to learn the word yes, because when an opportunity comes, take it.
Yeah.
You can always say no later. But, if it's not for you, say no.
Yeah, things have a way of working out.
It is. It's true. They all work out.
And even when I moved to Alaska, I spent the first 2.5 months in a tent. Oh. And so until
you are a true adventurer
with 3 dogs, until it fell apart, we found a place to live. So things
you are
work
a glutton
out.
For punishment.
Yeah, it seems that way.
I like your haircut, though. I mean, that part looks good.
Yeah,
we share. We can't grow hair on chrome. That's what I say.
Right, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Todd, it's great talking to you.
You too. Thank you very much.
For a long time. Good luck with your book.
Thank you.
Good luck with your talk. And I'm sure Chips will push this thing as much as he can and get it out into the world and share it with other people. I think it's great.
That's right.
You never see a book like this. I want to, you don't talk about a book on sepsis. I mean, who in the world writes a book on sepsis? How do you do it? And this sounds like the way you do it. You weave in all these adventures into it and share them. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just being honest with yourself and the reading.
All right.
Readers.
Well, thanks again, Todd, and thanks Chip for coming in.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.